Hey everybody, welcome back to Play the Game HQ. I'm Daniel and I am joined today by Jeremy Tracey, maker of Tracey Boards, arguably the best Crokinole boards in the world. Not a sponsor, just here to share the love of Crokinole and the skills. And this is a little series we're calling Get Better at Crokinole. That's my goal while you're here, and hopefully we can help all the viewers do that too. So this is going to be beginner kind of rules and techniques, not just a straight how to play. I'm going to do a separate how to play video, so if you want to get a full how to play with all the rules and stuff like that, you can go watch that video. We'll leave a link below. But for now, Jeremy, you're just going to go through kind of basic technique and strategy, and then in separate videos, we'll have some intermediate and advanced strategies so that by the end of it, you can just be awesome at Crokinole.
Awesome.
So,
absolutely.
Take it away.
I'm going to do a super fast, superficial rundown of the rules.
And we do have this on a Lazy Susan so that it works better on camera.
Yes, absolutely. So this is not normal for competitive play. So I'm going to borrow one of your buttons to teach the rules as fast as...
You take all of my buttons because this is all you. I'm here to glean and ask questions.
So when you play singles, you sit across from your opponent. You each have 8 buttons of different colors. Okay. So I've got 8 black. You would have 8 red. Take turns shooting your buttons. You shoot each button one time only. Valid shots stay on the board. Invalid shots come off. When it is your turn, your button must start touching the shooting line somewhere in your quadrant. Mm-hmm. If there is an opponent's button on the board anywhere, you must make contact with it. That is a valid shot. If you miss, invalid, and goes in the gutter. Question we always get, are we allowed to combo through our own buttons? Absolutely. That is a valid shot. But if you hit your own and do not hit your opponent, both of yours come off.
It hurts.
It does. It stings. When there's no opponent's button in play, you must what we call play to the middle. It has to end up within this circle or at least touching the line. If you come up short or if you go long, invalid shot goes in the gutter. Once all 8 buttons have been shot by both players, you add up whatever is left on the board. This circle's worth 5, 10, 15. If it lands here, it immediately comes out and counts as 20 points at the end of the round. The goal is to have more points than your opponent by the end of the round.
Now, one clarification on that. In this situation, if you have a button already on the board and you make contact with this one and it goes in and the one you just shot stays out, that's a valid play as well, as long as one of the buttons involved in the play remains in the center circle.
We have a 14-minute video on our channel called Crokinole's Most Confusing Rule, when I go through every possible scenario because we get more emails, more messages, more questions about that scenario than anything else in Crokinole. It truly is, it's not that complicated, but somehow it causes a lot of confusion. If when you're scoring, a button is even barely touching a line, it is worth the lower point region. So if it is touching this, it is already 0. You get rid of it so it doesn't disrupt play and your opponent doesn't have to make contact with that button. So when we talked about a beginner video, I sat down and figured, okay, there's 4 things we'll focus on to help people get started. I would say these are the 4 biggest things that people do, quote unquote, wrong. So we're going to talk about how to use the wax, how to flick, get the off, as well as the last one is keep the shooter on. So first thing, wax. Because this is shuffleboard wax, and yes, a shaker is included automatically with any Tracey board you order.
Just cover the board with it like you do a shuffleboard table, right?
That's what we're about to talk about. Thank you.
I'm setting you up.
Yes, you did. You lobbed that into me. People do like to sprinkle it all over the board. I don't like that. It doesn't hurt the board, but as a player, I hate it. If I was to come sit down and play on a board that had wax all over it, the first thing I'm going to do is clear all that wax off. You only need a little bit of this playing wax in the gutter by doing this gently. You're not trying to sand the gutter. You gently do this. A little bit will stick to the underside of the button and it makes it nice and smooth. That's all you need. You don't need it all over the board.
And the reason you don't want it on the board is because it creates unpredictable spots.
Yes, you end up with it thicker here and thinner there. And then when people try to even it out, they try to even it out by just adding more. And it ends up, you can hardly see the lines by the time So that's the first thing. The second thing is flicking. What I'm going to say now is not a rule. It is a suggestion that you anchor your hand. What I see a lot of beginners do, I call it the floating hand. There's so much going on here that it is very hard for them to control and it's very hard for them to be consistent. So if you anchor your hand, I rest my hand here. I was watching you have your thumb as an anchor point.
I tend to either do that or have the thumb there. Now, just because you've been so good about clarifying, or just so necessarily clarifying this in other videos so we avoid the angry comments, you were just holding the board and doing that. That's, again, because we have it on Lazy Susan. In actual play, you're not allowed to touch the table or the board with your non-flicking hand.
Yes, in competitive play, you're not allowed to do that. Here, because the Lazy Susan is there, I'm just using that to stabilize. Normally, I would have my hand.
Leave us a comment about how much you like the video, not about the hand on the board.
Thank you. So most people are going to shoot with one of these two fingers. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is, experiment. I am a second finger shooter. I am not saying that's better. Some of the best players in the world shoot with their index. I also like to use my thumb. Some of the best players in the world do not. It is personal preference. You find, I played against a guy once who shoots with his thumb. I've got, again, a long video that goes through every flicking style I've seen. I'd encourage you to experiment, but then settle in on one and run with it for a while. If every time you shoot, you try something different, it's not going to help. So experiment, but then settle in to your style and practice with it for a bit, and soon you'll be doing that too.
And just to add, I'm not the expert, but I have been focusing a lot on just flicking technique these last couple days. It's really like your tendency is to do that with your fingers sideways, and it's really impossible without, I would guess, a ton of practice to know where you're going to contact and what angle. Like, you're going to get a lot of like rolling off to the side doing that. So try and keep your fingers straight up and down. And because you said like most people shoot with those, I just want to try and see if maybe, nope, it's not better with your pinky.
I mean, there are people that use that as, I didn't mean to do that. Well, I kind of did, but yeah. All right. Moving right along. I'm sorry.
Just going to sit here with my cup of coffee. I'm not going to contribute anymore.
If you do use your thumb, I encourage you to come up nice and close behind, because if you're back here, one, you end up whacking that disc and it can be hard on your finger. If you hurt your finger, you either have a board that plays too slow, or you are back too far away. You should be able to come up nice and close behind and give that a push, like so.
And when you flick, take a beat, like set your finger and then go. That's in one of our coaching videos where I was trying to make a shot over and over. I was just coming up and flicking and flicking. Just take a beat, anchor your hand, look at the board, take a second for everything to settle out, and then flick. Don't just come right up and flick it.
I see that a lot. Why don't I get better? And people set, flick, and just, I'm not saying wait and count to 30, but just pause and then
This
flick.
is a sport. Work on your technique just like any other athlete.
Greatest sport on earth.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about wax, we talked about flicking. The next thing that I see, if you watch top level Crokinole, the board stays what I would say clean. I would describe it as clean. There are not a lot of buttons on the board. When you watch amateurs play, very new people, by the time the round ends, there are buttons everywhere on the board. You need a calculator to figure out who won the round. If you put two beginners across from each other, whoever learns the skill I'm going to talk about right now is probably going to win. And I call it get the off. Make sure you're hitting your opponent hard enough that they go all the way off, because while that is a valid shot and your button stays on, so does your opponent's. You, at the same time, you don't need to kill it. You don't need to try to hit them in the face with the button, but you want to. If you get the off and your opponent doesn't, and you get the off and your opponent doesn't, like if you keep knocking the opponents off and your opponent, thank you, appreciates that, you are going to win by default. So yes, just focus on knocking the button all the way off the board. And if you do that more than your opponent does, you're most likely going to win. And I would say when you are starting, even if you were to do that, you got the off, but you lost your shooter, you may go, okay, that's a bad thing. When you're playing at the top level, if you're sitting across from a high level player, they probably have a 70 or 80% success rate on open 20s. So you do not want to give your opponent an open 20. But when you're sitting across from a beginner, their success rate on open 20s might be 10%. The price that you pay for losing your shooter when you're playing against a beginner is very low. Right. So I don't really care if you're losing your shooter a few times. But as you start to get better and your opponent starts to get better, then the next thing you want to work on, not only are you want to get the off, but you want to keep the shooter on.
Because they must make contact
Yes.
with that if it's on the board and can't just shoot for the 20.
Yep. I mean, we are going to do more videos that talk about intermediate skills, advanced skills,
Controlling
strategy,
the board. Yeah.
controlling the board, all kinds of things like that. But the truth is, if you're just getting started with this game, I would focus on being consistent with, use your wax properly, be consistent with your flick, learn how to control that, the weight and the angle, then get the off. Then the next level is to keep your shooter on. And if you are doing that, you are going to beat your other beginner friends.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Those are the most important beginner skills. So if you're sitting there and you're an intermediate player and you're going to go, yeah, but what about this, Jared? What about that? We will get
Other
to that.
video.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully this helps you get a little bit better at Crokinole.
Well, you've been applying what we've just talked about since I got here, and I've already seen improvement.
I feel like I'm better at Crokinole.
I feel like if I moved here permanently, then, I mean, eventually.
We have a barn. And a chicken coop that currently doesn't have chickens in it. You are welcome.
I'd rather there was chickens in it. They keep me warm. They help me stay warm. No? Okay.
They'll keep you warm. They also have other... I wouldn't want to sleep with the chickens.
I feel like this conversation circling the drain. Maybe we should get back to Crokinole and...
Yeah, so This is Get Better at Crokinole. Thank you so much for watching. We'll leave links below to where you can find Tracey Boards. If you want to look at them, pick one up. They're the best boards in the world. I'm just going to say it so you don't have to. They're fantastic. The quality of them is just top-notch, outstanding. And what else do we need to leave links to? Our other videos in this series, you can find those below. We'll leave a link to traceyboards.com and to Jeremy's... I do this professionally. I should be better at this. To his YouTube channel, that's the word I was looking for. So you can see all his tips and tricks and all that. And again, continue to get better at Crokinole. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll let Jeremy know when one pops up so that he can come and answer it better than I could. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.